Hi, I'm Curious Cass, and this is Curiosity Junkie. Today's guest is a healer, teacher, and founder of A Guide for Life. Please welcome Kylie Attwell. Hi, Kylie. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Cassie.
Good. I'm so happy to have you on Curiosity Junkie. This is quite an opportunity for me and for the audience to get to listen to your knowledge and kind of learn a little bit from you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an absolute honor for me to be here with you today. So thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Fantastic. Well, let's jump in. I want to talk a little bit about your journey, because to me, that's the thing that I find the most interesting is how do we get to that point where things fall into place and we're really starting to live our best life. We find our purpose and we're in just such a good place. So we all go through a lot before we get there. So let's talk a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Well, I was going to say to you, do you want the long version or the short version? But let's just go for it, right? I guess I've been melancholy, from as long as I can remember. So I've suffered from anxiety and depression my entire life. And I grew up in a small country town, and I, sort of got to the end of high school and was raring and ready to sort of get out into the world. And I sort of thought, well, I can get over this by starting to control my life. So obviously by going out and getting a career and getting my own place. And so that's essentially what I did for the next, eight or so, or probably 10 years. I worked really, really hard to acquire all the things that I thought that would make me happy and the things that people tell you that would make you happy. So pretty much by the time I was 28, I had a flourishing career. I was literally at the top of it in medical imaging technology. I had a dream house, which I'm living in now. I had a classic car. I was, longing for that loving, committed relationship. I didn't have that. But, I had an amazing social life and was really filling my life with all of these activities that I was kind of drawn to. So like, cooking or bookbinding or this or that. And unfortunately, sort of, I got to the point where I'd acquired all of these things and I was just miserable. There was nothing. Life was just so hollow. And I was just, as I said, I just kept sort of trying to, include these activities into my life, hoping that they would make a difference, and it did. And of course, the elusive man, wasn't present. And so I just put it down to I hadn't met the right person, and I'd obviously chosen perhaps the wrong career. So what I did was I actually sort of left the safe world of radiography and jumped off the deep end and followed a passion. And I didn't know that it was a passion at the time. I thought it was my purpose, and entered the world of the architectural industry and manufacturing spray metal finishes for the architecture and design industry, and basically meant that I could coat anything in metal. And I absolutely loved it at first. I could be creative, I could work with my hands, I was loving every single day of my life. But the wheels really started to fall off as soon as I started to hit all of the challenges that small business owners face, like, marketing and staff and all of those things. And suddenly this kind of dream career came to a grinding halt. And by that, I mean like emotionally inside, because, I kept plugging along, and it didn't matter how much effort I put into that business. It really was floundering. And I kept going for 6.5 years because I just couldn't save face, leaving something that had given me so much, enthusiasm and passion and joy in those initial stages. I kept thinking, if I just get it going and get it right, then everything will be fine. But it just got worse and worse and worse. So I finally threw in the towel and left. And it was around that time, by that stage, I'd actually met someone, I'd married them, the marriage fell apart at the same time, so lots of things going on, and I went into a whole other career. But it was around that time that I actually found a career direction specialist who I do mention in the book, that helped me identify the themes of my life calling in a session that took around about an hour. And that was just mind-blowing. And it was kind of spooky, because she actually described me in a way that I didn't even know myself. Like, she just nailed so much about my personality, my childhood, my subconscious beliefs, all of that sort of thing. And I was so excited by what she found, but the problem was I truly didn't know how to start living that purpose. I didn't even know where to begin. So I kind of took what she said on board and just kept exploring, all of these other different modalities that I was interested in the background, whilst I ended up in the event management sector. And this kind of went on and on and on and on for many years. And it wasn't until I had a life-changing experience in 2012, in which I traveled to the USA and Mexico, and had an adventure that was the most synchronistic event of my life, in terms of like the entire experience. And it was in that moment that I just looked at my life and thought, hang on, why isn't my life flowing on a day-to-day level the way it is on this trip? Because if I told you the truth, the full story, it takes about a day, and anyone that I've mentioned the story to, they say you have to turn this into a movie. And so hey, maybe one day, but we'll see. And so I just had this most extraordinary adventure, and then had to come back into the life that I was living after this 6 weeks. And then I was completely shell-shocked, and went to myself, well, what do I do? And I couldn't go back to that old life. I couldn't go back to the event management industry and the frenetic pace and the pressure and the deadlines and the timelines that I was under. Yeah. But I needed to survive as well. But I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to give myself 3 months break to really try and reenact what had happened in that journey on a day-to-day level. And that's pretty much what I sat down to do. But I sat down, I think, for 2 weeks and just cried, because I did not know who I was. And I didn't know what would bring me joy. And I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And
sometimes I do think there's power in that release too. Like, you have to mourn a little bit and get through that. Yeah,
absolutely. And there was so much grief, just from childhood and things that I just hadn't addressed. But there was just this real terror and fear, and also too this whole thing, like, I should be working, because I was workaholic. I should be working, I should be doing something, but in my heart I knew that I needed to do this. If I couldn't do this, then it was almost sort of like, when would I ever be I wanted to sort of get to a point where I could be still and just enjoy being in the moment. And I thought, if I don't tackle this now, this is never going to happen. So cried for a few weeks. But I finally started to incorporate the things about the trip that brought me joy. And it was actually a trip with, it was Greg Braden, was the Mexico part of it. He was doing a tour there and a conference. And I started listening to some of his lectures. And oh my goodness, I lit up, I felt so much better instantly. And I just sat there listening for days on end to Greg. And then I ran out of Greg, and I went, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so then I went, I know, he's really good friends with Bruce Lipton. I'll listen to Bruce. So I started listening to Bruce's lectures, and I thought, I can't just sit around listening to lectures. I need to do something with my hands, which is what I love. And so I started knitting. And in the end, I progressed from being inside the home to outside the home, in a local park under a tree, knitting, drinking cups of tea, and listening to lecture after lecture after lecture. And I kind of just kept finding different teachers along the way. And what was fascinating in embracing the things that I was curious about actually led me to understand more about the mind and the subconscious mind in particular, and how that, it basically creates the blocks and the patterns that prevent us from being full expressions of ourselves. But I also found some key resources that actually helped me uncover and own my purpose. So I already kind of knew the themes of my purpose, but it was the resources that I found in that period that really helped me to own them on the inside and excavate what that really looked like. And that was the real pivotal turning point. And of course, I just went from, as I said, being anxious, depressed all my life to all of a sudden having purpose and meaning, because I knew that what I wanted to do was to share that information with other people. I now have the tools to start transforming my life. I did start doing that. I rolled in Psych K almost immediately and started shifting subconscious beliefs straight away. Instantly noticed changes and shifts that were occurring not just within me, but projected out onto my outer world. And it just sort of went from step to step. So I thought, what's the best way for me to start sharing this information? And I just assumed that putting it out on a website would be the very first step. And so I started collating the information, and I sent it to a dear friend of mine, and she said to me, Kylie, no one will ever read this. And I went, what? And she said, it's not like your Deepak Chopra or Eckhart Tolle. No one will ever read this. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I had so succinctly articulated every step that I thought was really important. She said, Kylie, your story's not even in there. It's like a procedure manual. And I went, that's exactly what I wanted to write. I said, no one needs to know about me. They just need to know about the steps that they need to take. And so she actually pulled my story out of me kicking and screaming. And she was right. At the end of the day, it was very dry and very boring. But it is the bones of the website that's there today.
Yes.
guideforlife.com. And but we share a lot of the things that I learned through my story, so it's got a little bit more animation to it.
Yeah, and I do think that when you're looking for guidance and help finding your purpose, just redirecting your life in general, it's so much easier to know that someone's been there and they're not just saying these are the things you should do. They've done it. I mean, you've been through all of these things. You had the emotions kind of out of control. You've had the great life. You've done all the steps, so you know what works. And that, I think, is way more powerful than just someone coming at us with a how-to book. It's, hey, look, this is where I come from. This is what helped me, is basically your message. Is these are the things that have been beneficial for me. Let me share them with the world. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've tried to do is not change the teachings in any way. So if I have found a resource useful, I'll refer people to that resource. It's not me trying to reinterpret what I learned, because for me, the gift was the teachers and what they taught me. So, I wanted to share their message as well. So that is a big part of it, is making sure that they're honored and acknowledged in that way, but also too directing people to the real source of the matter that's not filtered or diluted in any way.
Right. You mentioned Psych K, and
Yes.
I saw that in some notes, and maybe on your website, I can't remember, but I was curious, what is that exactly?
Psych K is a belief change process that was originated by a psychotherapist called Rob Williams. Bruce Lipton actually mentions it in the back of his book, Biology of Belief. And it's funny because I actually read that book in about 2009, and I remember exploring where can I learn this Psych K process back then, but there was nothing in Australia. So it took until, I think, 2013 until I found someone there. But essentially, it's a modality that allows you to seed new beliefs into the subconscious mind in a language that it understands. And it's done using muscle testing. So that's the way you start to establish the communication with the subconscious mind. There's quite a unique protocol in which you actually check whether it's actually safe and appropriate to actually change the belief first, which a lot of modalities don't do. And then you actually test whether you are strong or weak to a particular belief. And obviously, if you're not testing strong to it, it means that you don't have that belief in your subconscious programming. And so then you actually then seed a new belief directly into the subconscious using their system. And it's an extraordinary process. Mm. The beauty is that you can verify whether the belief's been accepted by the subconscious mind using muscle testing at the end. And of course, the real truth of the matter is, has something shifted within you, which invariably you can feel a shift as you're doing these processes. I know that when I do it, I have kind of almost little stars popping when I close my eyes and do it, or I feel some sort of shift. And then, of course, it's how you feel in the moment when you're, going about your day-to-day life. And then has the outer projection of life changed for you? And that's really the proof. But they also have processes that help actually convey your personal goals to the subconscious mind as well, sort of from a bigger picture rather than it just being a particular belief. And that's another really powerful process as well that's within the
that's
psyche.
Fascinating. Yes, I think it's so interesting, and there are so many things tied to our beliefs, kind of what we're conditioned with at a very, very young age and continued through adulthood. So shifting that is difficult and powerful.
It is, Cassie. I guess I try to approach subconscious programming from 4 different angles. I'm really mindful about our thoughts, because it's the thoughts that we think that create our reality. So it's about being very mindful about the thoughts you think, but it's actually about harnessing the mind, that you're just not allowing it to kind of go off on tangents and think all these negative thoughts. It's actually, how can you channel the mind and harness the mind in a way where you're actually thinking productively in terms of what you want to create in the future. And in actual fact, workbook 2, and we'll get to that shortly, I'm sure, is about how to harness the mind in a way that creates the same thought patterns as well as the same feelings, which really help in that manifestation process. So I'm really mindful about thoughts and creating a new level of thinking. Feelings and emotional self-management is essential. Earlier we were talking about the emotion code and the gift that is to allow you to eliminate the trapped emotions or the emotional baggage that you might be carrying around from those subconscious programs. And I'll talk about that further even in a moment. But having some sort of emotional release process is essential, and also to incorporating activities in your life that again assist you to practice that emotional self-management. You want to, and this is where passions come in particular. There's a key difference between passion and purpose, but passions, by incorporating them into your life, they help you remain emotionally buoyant, so that you're vibrating at a level that allows you to be a match for what it is you want to create in your life. So that emotional self-management or feelings as the second prong is critical. Beliefs are essential. To having tools like Psych-K, where you can literally go in and check to see whether you have a particular belief and to seed a new one in a matter of minutes, is critical. And then it's the actions that we take as well. And most people think that you've got to go out and make something happen, or pretty much it. Go out and make something happen. But the thing is, it's the actions that we take that to do this work, to actually do the inner work, that is far more productive than actually going out and taking actions to make something happen. Those actions are almost null and void, because what happens is when you can manage, your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and these actions, you start creating the opportunities are drawn into you. So things actually start to come your way. And it sounds, quite magical and a bit woo-woo, but honestly, when you've started to live it and make the changes on the inside, the whole outer reality shifts and changes, and doors that were just not there in the past just miraculously, start to open. And I think that for me, that travel adventure that I had back in 2012 really taught me that, because it's about, going into a situation with an intention of what you want to create and experience, without trying to control the situation, without having detailed plans. And as a former event manager, I know what that's like, where you plan and program down to the last minute because you don't want to miss out on anything.
Right.
So not planning, not having any expectations either, and then actually just following the things that excite you and spark your curiosity and arouse, some sort of interest, or they're the things that you need to follow, the things that actually truly are a part of you, and they're kind of like your inner GPS. And that's one thing that I never would have thought, that my sitting under a tree, listening to lectures, knitting and sipping cups of tea would have ever amounted to me having complete, and it wasn't a download to me, from the universe, but the download from these lectures as to, how to find my purpose, and also so much about the subconscious mind and the way the mind works and how to change my life. I mean, I'd been running around for years, and I kid you not, like 15 years, looking for all of the things that I found by sitting under that tree and just doing the things that I loved in that moment to moment. And it was, extraordinary.
I love that you said inward, turning inward first before you start taking action outside, because I'm a firm believer in when you turn inward and you start to heal all the things that continue to make you, live a cyclical pattern in life, and it's not a cyclical pattern that you want to be living, and you can figure out what it is, and you stop and you go, oh, hang on a second, the common denominator is me. I need to figure out what this is. So I love, and I've spent time personally doing that, and also the manifesting. I agree with you. People think it's woo-woo, and it can seem like that, like it's magical and it's just too easy. But I'm like, I'm telling you, that's why I love sharing that there are so many people out there doing it. And when you take the time to heal you and then really understand your thoughts, bring into your world whatever it is you're thinking. Like, what you're thinking is what you're going to bring into your life and your world. So I love that's a big part of what you do. So let's talk a little bit about your book and your workbook, because I love the work you're doing. I just think it's fascinating.
Thank you so much. Well, it's actually a series of workbooks. There's a series of 7 all up, and I know what will be in each one. It's a matter of actually, I guess, documenting what's in my mind. Mm-hmm. But essentially, the first workbook is a book all about finding your purpose. And it's not a book about why it's important to find your purpose. I do cover that off as succinctly as I possibly can. I'm all about, let's just get in and do the work. I don't want to repeat the message kind of more than once if I can help it in the book. So they're quite thin in that regard, but quite powerful. And so I kind of cover off why it's important to find your purpose, and also to the key differences between passion and purpose, which is so important to know because it's not talked about really. And then the book actually then contains 5 activities that consist of 25 questions, as well as a consultation with a career direction specialist. And the idea is that the 25 questions help you establish the type of person that you aspire to be, the activities and fields that inspire you the most, where you may actually already be fulfilling your purpose or living elements of your purpose without even being consciously aware of it. Because basically your purpose is who you truly are. You can't help but be your purpose.
Yes.
For example, like an artist can't help but be creative. A carer or a nurturer can't help but take care of other people. So it's these aspects of yourself. You're actually already demonstrating them in your life. In fact, there's one question in the workbook that basically says or asks you, what role have you always performed regardless of what job you've ever been employed to do? And for me, I always ended up as the work counselor. People would come to me, tell me all of their problems. And then the other thing that I would do would be to meticulously document everything that someone needed to do so they never got in trouble and the company didn't waste any money. So what do? I end up in this role where I actually have people coming to me to learn, about how life works, how manifesting works, how to find your purpose. And I've articulated it in procedure manuals called workbooks, which have a little bit of a story in them now. So you just can't help but be that. So that's the essence of the book, but or the workbook. But essentially what it does, it gives you an objective perspective as well as a subjective perspective of your purpose. So the objective perspective is by having a consultation with a career direction specialist who actually specializes in identifying a person's soul's purpose and what they're here to teach this lifetime. And they've been specializing in it for over 25 years, and I trust them, impeccably. And every time someone has a consult with them, they're always like, oh my God, that was amazing. My mum's now going, my sister and everyone else. So I highly, highly recommend Narelle. So she'll give you an objective perspective based on her skills and knowledge. And then the subjective point of view is you going within and actually completing the 25 questions so that you can find the themes of your purpose, all throughout your life. Like your purpose is woven throughout the fabric of your life. You truly just need to know where to look and what questions to ask yourself. And as I said, that's the crux of the book, of the workbook itself. So
yes. And you're working on a total of 7.
Yes.
Correct? And you have first one out now.
Yes.
And do you have like a timeline that you're looking at?
The second one I'm in the process of editing now. So the aim, it will be in market by the end of this year.
Cool.
So it's exciting. And it's interesting because I'm constantly researching the others and writing notes. So I know the content of them, but it's literally just about sitting down and articulating it. And also too, what's important to me is to, again, make them short and succinct. People don't want to read the same messages the whole way through a book and then get to the end and go, great, now what do I do with that information? So that's really important, is making sure that the messages aren't repeated, as well as including the different activities that will actually assist you to move through that phase of the journey. So what I've done is tried to break the journey up into about 7 phases or stages, to make the process of self-discovery and self-transformation as digestible as possible. It's not a short journey. Anyone that tells you that they have a magic pill for happiness is kidding you. So as I said, I just want people to celebrate like the little wins along the way, by working through each of the workbooks. But also too, not everyone might need all of the workbooks. So if you already know your purpose, then you probably don't need workbook 1. Or if you've got an incredible vision for your life that's, highly emotive, and really juicy, as some people say, then you might not need that part of it. Or if you know a lot about the subconscious mind and how to reprogram it, you might not need workbook 5, for example. But, you know, I truly think there's probably things to learn in there for everyone, regardless of what book it's in. But that's essentially what I've been trying to do. And second workbook, which, as I said, I'm editing at the moment, is all about how to create that, you know, emotive vision for yourself that's highly inspiring. But not only that, it actually feels tangible, real, and achievable, because that's the critical part. It's one thing to have this pie in the sky vision for what you want to create, but if you don't truly feel that you can achieve it, well, then it's, as we know, it's all about belief. It's never going to happen. So, so part of or a big component of the second workbook is actually building that vision. And then it's about the tools that you use to then harness your mind to activate the same thoughts, the same feelings, literally at will, on demand, so that you can start to, I guess, condition the body. That's a term that Dr. Joe Dispenza would say, to condition the body to experience the event before it actually happens. And what actually happens is, during this process, you're actually already starting to rewire the neurology and reprogram the subconscious mind. So by the time you've worked through, you know, the second workbook, you're already starting that process of potentially drawing in opportunities that will assist, that will actually be a match for the life that you're designing and building as you go. So that's kind of the second part of it. Rather than you find your purpose and you go, right, great, I'm going to go out and take action and I'm going to live that purpose. It doesn't work that way. You've got to psychologically become the person that is a full expression of yourself. Emotionally, you've got to, you know, become that person. And you've got to start taking the actions to clean up your life. So you've got to physically become that person as well. And that's that inner work that needs to occur before you take any real actions out there to actually initiate it in your life on a more tangible way.
Yes, and I do think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions about purpose, is that people think once they know what their purpose is, and there are a lot of places out there that you can like do steps to tell you what your purpose is, but then there's no actionable, now that you know what it is, how do you move forward? What do you do? And so I love that you have the pieces that go with that, the healing, the bringing your life to a place where you can actually create that life that supports your purpose. I think that's fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a big part of that, I mean, it all comes back to subconscious programming. I mean, for me, this whole process that I'm articulating is, first step is purpose, and the second step is really about modifying all of those programs that we were, you know, taught, given, downloaded as a child, that create the obstacles that prevent us from being that full expression of ourselves. So it's how do we do that? And that's pretty much what the rest of the workbook series is all about, stepping through those processes.
I love it. I just want to remind everybody that this is Kylie Attwell. Kylie, why don't you share with everyone how they can get in touch with you?
I think the best place to start is really the website, theguideforlife.com. I share a lot of my story there. There's a lot of free resources, certainly under the resource section. As I said, I share my story broken down into kind of 7 chapters, and they're only mini chapters. And I actually share the resources that influenced each stage of my journey. So, you know, whether it was a workshop, whether it was a particular book or lecture or seminar, I reference all of those as I walk through the particular journey. But certainly, I would definitely say starting there. And of course, my email address and telephone number are listed on the top right-hand corner of every page of the website as well. And they're more than welcome, if they have any questions, to contact me, and I'll be happy to assist.
All right. Well, I will definitely put the link to Kylie's website in the description of the YouTube and on all of the descriptions for the podcast. So that will be included in each of those. I do want to ask you, what do you think the one big mistake most people make when they're at that point in their life where they're starting to question, what am I doing? They've changed jobs 3 or 4 times. They know they're not happy, and they're trying to figure that out. What do you think is the biggest mistake people make when they start researching or looking for a purpose?
Well, I think just to even take it back a step there, I think a lot of people try to change their life from the outside rather than from the inside. And I just want to reiterate again that the only real lasting change that you can make is if you change what's occurring on the inside. And obviously that goes back to the thoughts, feelings, and beliefs again, and then the actions, how to do it. So until you actually embrace that concept and start working from that level, then that's ultimately, I think, probably the biggest mistake. I think a lot of people, there's certainly been a lot of sort of, I guess, business experts out there sort of saying, just follow your bliss and the rest will kind of happen. And I certainly know it was something that Steve Jobs mentioned in his speech at Stanford.
Yes.
That I think we all know, I won't quote it exactly, and even Mark Zuckerberg said something similar. But when it comes to finding your purpose, it's knowing the difference between passions and purpose. And that's where I think a lot of people get really tripped up. It certainly tripped me up. I feel that passion, bliss, in things that excite you and that you just can't get enough of are really just the probably adjectives or descriptive words that describe how you feel when you're living your purpose. And so that's where I think people can confuse the two. When go out and do something that really excites you, that you love, no, they're just how you actually truly feel when you're living your purpose. So there is that sort of subtle difference there. Passions are, as I was mentioning before, really play a really important role. They're the things that that bring you joy and happiness and lift your spirits, make you feel more emotionally buoyant. They're the tangible things like activities that you do. However, they will not sustain you in the long term. They will not bring that true meaning and fulfillment that living your purpose does. And that's the key difference. Your purpose is essentially who you are. It's who you can't help but be. But your purpose is actually a service that you provide others that provides solutions and meaning to solutions and answers to their problems. And it's that act of serving someone that actually brings the fulfillment and meaning. Where with a passion, you're just doing it because it feels great and you're getting something out of it. Where purpose is really about serving others. It's your contribution back to humanity, and it's that purpose and that fulfillment and meaning that really sustains you in the long term. And it's basically why you get out of bed in the morning. Other people rely on you. You have this duty to perform, but the thing is, it doesn't feel like a duty. It's when you really tap into it, when you really live in your purpose, the more you engage in it, the more you talk about it, like time just flies. It doesn't feel like work. The more into it you are, the more animated and excited you get. Like it's almost like you don't need food or water, because there's this fuel within you that just keeps feeding you, and it's the most amazing thing. So when you actually see someone in their purpose, they're just radiating and glowing.
Yes. What's your favorite part of what you do when you're working with clients? What do you really love about helping people in that
Yeah,
aspect?
I think for me, it's kind of that aha moment when like the penny starts to drop and they realize that one, they probably start to get that definition between passion and purpose, but also two, when they really understand about the subconscious mind, that it's just these programs and patterns that have held us in place, and that it is possible to do something about it, and that we actually have the power to actually change our lives.
Yeah.
You know, you're not a victim anymore, and for them to really see that, they start to, you know, there's just something in them that changes, and their eyes just start to sparkle. And I don't know, this it's almost like this you give them a sense of hope, or
Mm.
yeah, I think it's a sense of hope that not all is lost, and that there is something that they can do to change their lives, that they really are the captain of their own ship.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that for me is, you know, the best bit. And of course, then when they come back to you and report in kind of thing, and just say, you know, this is this and this and this has happened. Oh my gosh, you were, you know, and sometimes it takes people a little while to get it, and that's okay. But when they're like, oh, you've been saying this to me for so long, and I finally got it, and this has happened. I mean, that just brings you so much joy. But as I said, for me, it's kind of that penny, when the penny drops moment, because you kind of just know that you've been really effective in that moment. Up until that point, you can kind of be talking and talking, and you know that it's probably not quite gone in. So
Right. So when you're working with clients, are you able to do it long distance?
yes,
Okay, so
yes,
you can do it through Zoom and that kind of thing.
absolutely. So I do a lot of one-on-one mentoring. I can facilitate, can and do facilitate belief change using Psych K. I do emotional release work using the emotion code. I can't practice what they call access bars, which is a hands-on modality that pretty much quietens the mind. It turns the self-talk down in the mind, and makes the brain operate in a more coherent fashion. That is a hands-on in-person service. And the other thing that I am is a biowell practitioner. So I actually measure people's energy fields and the size and alignment of their chakras using the biowell GDV camera. So again, that's an in-person service. So I don't do those remotely, but certainly I can obviously do the one-on-one mentoring, the Psych K belief change, and the emotion code. In saying that, though, I believe in self-sovereignty, and I don't even have to be sitting here with you to do the belief change work or the emotion code work. You can go off and you know, go on with your day, pick up the children, do your work, you know, make sandwiches, whatever you need to do, and I could be working on you. But and that will certainly have an impact. There's absolutely no question. However, if the client isn't becoming mindful of the work that they need to do, and if they're not taking the actions and doing the inner work themselves, it's not, you know, it will last up until a certain point. But if they're still, you know, from a automatic behavior perspective, actually just going through the same routine each day and not actually genuinely trying to, you know, modify their behaviors and their thoughts and their actions and practice emotional self-management, there's only so much that I can do. And if they sort of run into the same obstacles again, you can actually kind of recreate the same beliefs that I might have shifted. So I would much rather clients actually spend the money on doing the Psych K basic workshop, as well as picking up a copy of the emotion code, and even, you know, studying with Dr. Bradley Nelson as well. So as I said, I can do that work for people, and I certainly have in the past, and I certainly do currently. But as I said, I would as a practitioner, much prefer you to spend the money that you would spend with me on actually going and doing those workshops, so that you can then facilitate belief change for yourself, or release your own emotional baggage, but not only just for you, but also for the people around you, because once you've done that work, you can then assist others. So you can do what I'm doing with others. So to me, that's far more powerful and more, meaningful to me, for someone to take the reins of their own self-transformation. And that's what my work is all about. That's why I'm creating these workbooks, is so that you don't need to rely on me, that you've got, these resources in front of you to do all of the work that you need to do yourself.
Yeah. And I think, like anything change wise, if you're not really ready, you just won't take the right steps. You won't do the work. You'll find excuses, and that's okay too. It just,
Yes.
you're not ready right in that moment. You're accepting it, and maybe you're becoming aware that you need to change, but you're not really there and really ready. I've been there and I've done that. And so I want to encourage people to not give up, and to just know that in this moment, it's not quite right or the time for you, but don't lose the book. Don't completely put it away. Keep it out in front of you, and it will slowly, you're becoming aware that you need to change. Stay in that place and you will start to change and be more open to changing. Because I think that's the hard part, is then you start beating yourself up because you didn't follow through, and it's okay. It's just not the time yet. So
No, I agree.
I think that's important too. Well, I have totally enjoyed this conversation with you, and I feel like there's still so much more we could probably get into. But maybe after you release another workbook or two, we can have you back on and talk about some different steps that you're facilitating. I don't know, do you do events as well? I think I saw on your website you have an event tab. And
yeah, the events I actually predominantly list at the moment are the events that the teachers that I feature on the site, that they do. So I do, again, I'm always referencing back to them. I just did presented at a masterclass with the founder of this iconic Australian brand that manufactures and retails organic body products, facial and body products, as well as aromatherapy oils. And we did speak about purpose and the use of the GDB camera in terms of, doing energy assessments to look at alignment of chakras. So unfortunately, people have missed out on that now, but we'll actually be doing some in-person conversations, with the founder, Salvatore, coming up. My big focus has really been on just creating the curriculum rather than actually doing any workshops. With the launch of Workbook 2, though, I probably will do a workshop that centers around the first couple of activities in the book, because that will be a fun way as a group that we could, work through those activities, and certainly sort of start to introduce the book in that way. But ultimately, and there'll be more down the track, but ultimately I really do want to create this curriculum and then set up wellbeing centres, both urban and rural versions of it, hopefully on a global level. I know that's a really big statement. Certainly they'll be local to start with, but that will allow people to come and immerse themselves fully in the content, remove themselves from their day-to-day life, and really start to explore who they are as a person, and what they're passionate about, finding their purpose, and then really get into that subconscious programming and do it in the a nurturing, caring environment that these wellbeing centres will offer. So there'll certainly be lots of workshops and events when they're up and running and kicked off. And again, I will do things as we go along, but certainly that has been my big focus, is really just creating the curriculum to start with, and doing shows like this, the podcast, and the launches and things, and hopefully a couple of workshops along the way, but I'll certainly list those on the events tab of the website.
Well, fantastic. Okay. And any information I get from Kylie, I will share with all of you as well. I'm going to go ahead and say that is a great place to end our conversation. And I want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge and all that you've been through that has led you to your purpose and passion. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Cassie. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to sharing more at a later date as well. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. And to all of you, thank you for tuning in, listening. Stay safe and stay curious.
With you all, lots of love from Australia.
I love it. Awesome. Bye, all.